In today's episode, I want to show you the real reason that you still have chronic back pain or sciatica. So in this episode, you're going to learn why most claims about the root cause of chronic pain are just out of date, they're false, they're not evidence-based, how to understand the real factors, multiple things that will contribute to chronic pain, and how to understand that for yourself. I'm going to show you the cup analogy, which is my favorite analogy for understanding pain, what actually causes chronic pain, practical solutions on how to fix it, examples of evidence-based treatment. Okay, so let's dive in. Real quick, if you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Anthony Davis, and I empower people with chronic back pain and sciatica to reclaim the active life that they love using evidence-based holistic treatment. And when I say holistic, by the way, we're talking whole person, right? Not woo-woo stuff. We're talking science-based exercise, nutrition, mental health, sleep. What are the things that you can control? So first of all, what are the myths, right? Everybody thinks that the reason they have sciatica or back pain or any kind of chronic pain is usually because of some type of damage, right? It's the stuff that you see on your MRI. That could be a disc herniation, degeneration, scoliosis, spondylolisthesis, and so on. These things rarely can be blamed for pain. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing that people commonly blame for pain are imbalances, muscle imbalances, misalignments, short leg, pelvic tilt, scoliosis, weak core, tight psoas, tight hip flexors, things like that. Okay, weak glutes, etc. Again, these are not evidence-based. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the last thing, which is probably the most common thing that comes up in the rehab space, is a weak core. And everybody wants to blame their back pain on a weak core. But then we have so many people who join our Beyond Back Pain program. And I'm like, okay, so what did you do for physical therapy? And it's nothing but core stability exercises for 3 months. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing wrong with doing core stability exercises, and it can be helpful, but it is not in and of itself a comprehensive approach to rehab. So the point is, and the thing that you really need to get through your head, okay, is single factor explanations are always wrong. Anytime somebody tries to say that there is one single thing causing your pain, it's just your piriformis, it's just the disc herniation, it's just your tight hip flexors, they're always wrong, right? And now that is not to say that those physical attributes or physical structures or inflammation or a strained muscle or a herniated disc don't matter at all. It's just to say that those are one piece of a very large and multifactorial pie, if you will. And I will also want to be fair to both sides of this argument, because on one side, there's the biomechanists who are arguing that all of your pain can be attributed to poor or faulty biomechanics, misalignments, poor posture, poor motor control, that kind of thing. And then on the other side are people who are saying none of that matters. The physical body basically doesn't matter at all. It's all about stress, anxiety, depression, fear, loneliness, trauma, etc. And that pain is essentially in the brain. Now, both sides have some truths to them. Both sides are totally missing the bigger picture, though. There is no single cause, whether we're talking physical or mental and emotional. These are all just factors, right? So there's no single cause for chronic pain. Pain is multifactorial. So yes, the physical things matter, but it's not just about the anatomy, but it's about full body physical fitness. But also, we have to account for stress, anxiety, depression, fear, trauma, all of those things, as well as sleep and nutrition and lifestyle and expectations and beliefs and culture and previous history and all those things and beyond. Okay, so stop blaming the stuff on your MRI, right? Stop blaming your core. Stop blaming asymmetry. Let me just walk you through each of those really quick, because I want to move on to practical solutions. I want to tell you exactly what you actually should focus on. I want to give you the most important thing that all of our clients struggle with. Everybody that I've ever worked with, this is their number one problem. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. But first, it's not going to make sense unless I debunk some of this stuff. So we've got tons of videos that show you all the actual research on this stuff. So I'm just going to rattle off some statistics off the top of my head here. But if you want the citations, we can send you the citations. All right. This is all evidence-based. So first of all, stop blaming your MRI. We know that most people have disc herniations, disc degeneration, etc., even though they're not causing pain. So pain-free people usually have disc degeneration and herniations, even with nerve root compression. I want to repeat that. It is common for people with zero symptoms, zero pain, to have disc herniations with nerve root compression, meaning that even if you have a disc herniation with nerve root compression and stenosis, that does not doom you to a lifetime of pain. It is possible to live without pain and have those things on your MRI. You don't have to fix those things, okay? And oftentimes, we might have somebody who, because we know that it's so common to have disc herniations with no pain, then if somebody did injure themselves, let's say somebody had a disc herniation already, but they didn't know about it because they've never had back pain. And then they pick something up and hurt their back or whatever happens, and they start having back pain. So they go to their doctor and they get an MRI. Remember, this is a person who has never had back pain and started developing back pain, but we know because we're like creating a hypothetical situation, that person may have already had a disc herniation before the pain happened. And then they go to the doctor and they get an MRI and they assume that because they see the disc herniation, that the disc herniation happened at the same time that the pain started. But we don't know that. The only way to know that is if you had a before and after MRI showing that you did not have an herniation prior to your pain starting. And then as soon as your pain started, now you have a disc herniation. And even if we had that, we would still not be able to blame the disc herniation for the pain, because the disc herniation itself is not necessarily, the damage that is creating the pain, because there are a lot of other things that go along with it that can amplify the pain. So a disc herniation might be the first thing, the first domino, if you will, for some people. But even if we could blame the disc herniation for the initial domino, all the other dominoes, like being less active now because of the pain, and sleeping like crap because of the pain, and eating, junk food because you're stressed out about the pain, and being super depressed and fearful because of the pain. And now your muscles are overprotective and guarded because of the pain, and you're not moving your spine, which means you're not getting good hydration, blood flow, and nutrient delivery to the spine because of all that stuff that's going on now. And people, places, things, stress, work, nutrition, sleep, all of those things now are amplifying the pain. And by the way, a lot of the pain that is associated with disc herniations is not because of the damage. It's because of the immune system trying to repair the disc herniation, meaning inflammation, not structural compression of a nerve, but hypersensitization, because your immune system has never seen the disc material ever, because there's not a blood supply to the center of a disc. And so that material, when your immune system sees it, it launches an immune response, and it, with inflammation, is pain. It's hypersensitization, right? So stop thinking about your MRI. It just stresses people out. And we know that if you get an early and unnecessary MRI, you're 12 times more likely to be pushed towards surgery. Stop blaming your MRI. Now, stop blaming your core stability. Not only do we know that core stability is not strongly linked to back pain, many people with back pain actually have a much stronger core than people without back pain, because they're bracing their core all the frickin' time, and because they've already done years of PT where all they did was core stability exercises. They have some of the strongest cores I've ever seen in my life, but they still have back pain. Why? Well, the other thing is, we also see, and this is experientially, many of our clients, we have to teach them to relax their core. Stop bracing so much. Stop being so overprotective of your spine. And if you stop moving your spine because you're told that bending your spine is bad for the discs, which it's not, that is false, then you stop hydrating and getting blood flow and stimulating that material, which means it atrophies and becomes more sensitive. So an overemphasis on core stability can lead to more pain. So stop focusing on core stability. It can be a helpful part of rehab in the right context at the right phase of rehab, but it is not a rehab strategy, okay? Now, the last thing is stop blaming your asymmetries. Everybody tells you that you have to fix your alignment, posture, asymmetries, pelvic tilt, leg length, tight psoas, weak glutes, weak core, all that kind of stuff. Every single person is asymmetrical. And if you did get hurt and you had back pain, You probably, like, if you have a short leg, every single person on the planet has one leg that's a little bit shorter than the other. Everybody. It doesn't matter. Even if it was up to an inch shorter, which would be a huge discrepancy, and you actually measured it on an x-ray, not by hand, because hand measurements do not work. They are not reliable. But even if you had a real measurement, you say, oh, I've got a short leg. See, that's why I have back pain. You had the short leg your whole life. So why do you have back pain now? Why now? Nothing changed. You didn't suddenly get a short leg. Your bones didn't shrink suddenly on one side. Why do you have back pain now? Oh, well, it's because of my pelvic tilt. You probably had an anterior pelvic tilt, just like basically everybody else on the planet, your whole life. So why do you have pain now? We still have to look at other factors. So what actually causes chronic pain? My favorite analogy is the cup analogy. So you have a cup, and in the cup are biological, psychological, social, environmental people, places, things, stress, right? It's all, you can call it all just stress because it's physical stress or mental and emotional stress or nutritional stress or lack of sleep is a stress on the body, whatever it is, it's just stress on the body, right? And again, physical stress is part of the stress. Okay. So we can say it's all just stress. So it could be overtraining, poor sleep, anxiety, junk food, whatever. If you are dealing with too much stuff and you fill the cup up with more stuff than you can handle, it's going to overflow and you're going to have pain. It's very simple. And this analogy tries to take all of the complexity of chronic pain, like I just said, right? All of the structural stuff and the stress and the depression and the fear and the, lifestyle and all these other factors, and try to boil it down into, look, your body does not discriminate between physical stressors and mental and emotional stressors. All it knows is that your body wants to protect itself. And part of protecting itself is being able to recognize when you are under threat. And if you are dealing with too much stuff in general in your life, physical, mental, emotional, nutritional, whatever, doesn't matter. It's too much. And your body says, whoa, this is too much. This is a threat. Part of your threat detection system, your fight or flight system, is pain, to tell you that the threat is a more serious threat and that you need to take a particular action as a result of that threat. Okay. So these are intrinsically linked. These are neurologically linked. And I have tons of videos breaking down the neuroanatomy on our YouTube channel. But the point is, if you got a cup, it fills up with too much stuff, it overflows, you're going to have pain or, something's got to give. It could be pain or sickness or injury or a mental breakdown. It could be anything, but something's got to give. And for many of us, it's chronic pain. So what we need to do is figure out what's in the cup. You got to take stuff out of the cup, and then we got to build you a bigger cup so that you are mentally and emotionally more resilient. Okay. That's what we got to do. And to back it up and really emphasize the mental and emotional side of things, this is real, right? This is not like woo-woo stuff. We know that. Then if you're watching the YouTube, if you're watching the podcast and you want to see, I also have this on our YouTube channel. So just FYI, but I am citing a study here that shows a 2.8 times increased risk of developing chronic back pain when we have high stress levels in our lives. So if you are stressed out, you're almost 3 times more likely to develop chronic pain. And if you have pre-existing depression, you are 2.5 times more likely to develop new back pain, even if you've never had back pain. And this is a systematic review and meta-analysis that I'm quoting on this slide. It is the best type of research that we have, right? And this is really interesting because this shows that the depression went before the back pain, right? Meaning we can't say, oh, well, these people had back pain and the back pain caused the depression. If anything, it's the other way around, that having depression makes you more likely to have back pain. And for some people, depression will cause back pain. Okay, so stress, anxiety, and depression are not in your head. These are neuroimmune hormonal dysfunctions in the whole body. These are real things that exist with, again, neurology and physiology and endocrinology. These are not in your head. These are systemic things that we can fix. So Now let's talk about the most important thing. I promised you this. I realized there was a lot that I wanted to, of context that I wanted to give so that you would understand why this is so important, why we don't need to worry about corrective exercise, why we don't need to fix your alignment, why we don't need to worry about the disc, why we don't need to stress out about hypercorrective exercises, right? The real solution here is to focus on not doing too much too fast and not doing too little for too long. That's it. It's really, really simple. The only two things, we can boil down every single rehab mistake, pretty much, into people either did too much too fast or they did too little for too long, right? So how this actually happens is you have your initial onset of pain and then you take it easy for too long because you're in pain. And in that time, your body is deconditioning. You're getting weaker, right? And because you're getting weaker, your capacity for exercise is lower, meaning when you then try to go back to the same level of activity or even less activity, your abilities are less. So it is even easier to accidentally trigger more pain and a flare-up because of the long period of deconditioning. So you did too little for too long, your body gets weak. Then you do too much too fast without realizing it, and you get re-injured. And then you're maybe even worse off than you were before. So we can't skip steps because then we hurt ourselves, and we can't baby ourselves because then we get deconditioned, and then it's easier to hurt ourselves doing basic stuff. And this too little for too long thing is really important because if you baby yourself and you avoid things like bending or lifting or twisting and squatting and deadlifting and things like that, because you have been told that these are dangerous for your body, they actually do become dangerous for you because you've been avoiding them, not because they're inherently dangerous, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're told not to do it, so you stop doing it. And then because you stop doing it, it becomes out of reach for you. So then when in real life you eventually have to do the thing like bending over to pick up a bag of groceries or doing the laundry. I was speaking with somebody actually just today who just joined our Beyond Back Pain program, and he hurt himself doing the laundry, right? And this is really common, right? A long period, decades of pain, right? On and off and things like that. And then all of a sudden you're getting hurt just doing basic daily activities. Well, let's dig into your, what does your physical activity, regimen look like? Well, we're doing upper body. Maybe I'm doing some push-ups and pull-ups and things like that. Oh, so nothing for your lower body. No squats, no deadlifts, nothing. Well, of course you're going to hurt yourself when in real life, you have to actually squat or get up and down off the ground or pick something up. So don't let it be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, okay. So how do we fix this, right? So we've got, don't do too much too fast. Don't baby yourself. Okay. So again, I'm going to make this even simpler. Don't skip steps and don't baby yourself. Find the Goldilocks zone. That's all we got to do. And then the Goldilocks zone will adjust because you'll get stronger. And then we can push you a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So then how do we solve this? We start with easy stuff and we gradually work our way to harder things. So let's say you hurt yourself squatting. Here's an example, right? And we say, oh, well, we've got to, okay, I get it. We just got to break down hard things into easier steps. Cool. So maybe you think that a squat progression, let's say you hurt yourself doing barbell back squats. I'm just using an example because I want to show that like even with disc herniations and sciatica, if you were, into barbell lifting, you could get back to barbell lifting. We've seen it a ton of times. So let's say you do this and you say, all right, cool. I get it. Dr. Davis, all I got to do is break it down into easier components. So what does a squat do? Well, it kind of makes you, bend at the hips a little bit. And then, there's some quad and glute strength. And then there's, actually squatting. So maybe you say, all right, for a while, I'm just going to do some basic yoga stuff like child's pose. And then eventually I'm going to do some like body weight exercise, like squats. And then let's just go back to, squatting like with a barbell. Great, cool. The problem is that this, although in concept, that's right. This is graded exposure. We're starting with easy stuff, medium stuff, hard stuff. But there's like 20 steps in between each of these steps. That's the problem, is that most people just don't know the steps. That's it, right? So you skip steps because you don't know that there are a bunch of steps in between the two things that you tried. And then you bounce back and forth and you're up and down, you flare things up, and it's really frustrating. And that's when people get into the rabbit hole of thinking, oh, well, see, I can't just return to my activities. It's not that simple. It couldn't possibly be that simple. I need to fix my alignment or my piriformis muscle or my psoas muscle or something. It's got to be something out of reach. It's got to be something that I wouldn't think of, right? It's got to be something clever, right? Absolutely wrong, right? So let me just show you, like, all we got to do to get somebody back to squatting is break down squatting into a bunch of tiny steps, and not just do squatting, but do all of your major joints and muscle groups in all of their movement directions, and then start from the easiest things and work our way up. But for example, the squat progression might be, well, what do we need to do a squat? You got to use your quads, you got to use your glutes, you got to be able to hinge at the hips, you got to be able to, you've got to be able to move your hips in relationship to your core while maintaining some semblance of strength and stability through your core. So there's a lot of things going on. All right, so we break those down and we say, well, maybe it just starts with something as simple as laying on your back or laying down and just gently contracting your quads and relaxing. And same thing with the glutes, gently contracting your glutes and relaxing. Can you even engage those muscles without pain, right? And if not, we could even make things easier from there. But this is something that somebody who is bedridden could do this, right? And then eventually it's like, all right, maybe we do some heel taps. You lay on your back, you brace your core, and we're just tapping, one heel to the ground at a time. That progresses towards a dead bug, and then maybe a child's pose, because that is where we're going to get that break at the hips, the hip flexion. And then we're not going to just jump into bodyweight squats. Maybe we just do a 1/4 wall squat hold, right? You get against a wall, and that way your back is taken completely out of the equation because you're supported against the wall, and you're only 1/4 depth on a wall squat. And then we go to, a further depth, and then eventually we do assisted squats, and then bodyweight squats, and then goblet squats. And like, there's a lot of variations. And then on the side with this, we're not just doing a squat progression, we're also making sure that all of your muscles and joints can move in all of their directions and be functional overall. Now we can get back into squatting. Does that make sense? This is just one example. I'm just trying to show you that this is why people screw up. It's not because they have a tight psoas, or like you're chasing your tail trying to find an alignment reason or an anatomy reason. And it's not an anatomy or an alignment reason that you're stuck. It's a progression. It's a load management exercise. It's an exercise programming issue. You just don't have an actual program. You're just being given a random, it's a piriformis. Here's a few piriformis exercises. Okay, you're a whole human being with over 640 muscles in your body, right? You can't expect to just target one muscle and magically fix chronic pain. And by the way, it's not just about the squats. It's about a goal-oriented progression, right? So if you wanted to get back into golf, we could do the same thing with a golf progression. And as we're progressing your exercises for full body strength and resilience, we can eventually start to pepper in some golf-specific stuff and say, well, how do you golf? Well, you got to hinge at the hips, you got to extend through the glute, you got to do some twisting and things like that. So we would work some of those exercises in, and then eventually part of your rehab is saying, we're just going to go to the golf course, and I just want you to putt. That's it. But before we could even do that, we have to say, can you do body weight exercises that mimic a hip hinge with a twist? Because that's golfing. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to golf. Right? And of course, you're going to flare yourself up when you go back to golf. So then we say, all right, can you putt for 5 minutes? Literally 5 minutes, and go home and see how you feel the next day. And then we go to 10 and 20 and so on. And then eventually we work in chipping, and then a half swing, and then a full swing, etc. So my point is, this is this is how you actually get back to sports. The trouble and the reason why people fail when they're trying to get back to sports after back pain and sciatica or any kind of chronic pain or flare up is because they don't have the patience to do it. People are bad at self-regulation. So where we come in, like what we do for people in our program, is we just tell you exactly, you're going to go to the golf course today and you are going to go putt for 5 minutes and go home. And that's it. The problem is that people lack self-control. and it seems ridiculous. Nobody would ever come up with that idea on their own because it seems like torture. I mean, that's the reality of it. But it works if you just are deliberate about it and you go from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, and then eventually from putting to chipping to a quarter swing, and quarter swing to a half swing, and et cetera to a full swing, and then 9 holes to, or then just the driving range, and then 9 holes, and then 18 holes, and you're only doing once a week, and then you go to twice a week. You get what I'm saying? That's what you need to focus on. Stop worrying about the alignment and all the other bullshit. Okay. So the point is, we got to take a whole person approach, address your whole body and actually do things in the right order. So the solution is, stop looking for singular answers. Start thinking about multiple factors, not in like your whole body, but also, other aspects. Start thinking about full body comprehensive exercise and graded exposure. Start thinking about lifestyle, stress, sleep, nutrition, and use graded exposure to full body strength and resilience. Okay. And I just want to point out here too, because we cannot blame a single tissue. Why would we bother with specific exercises like, oh, we're going to do your piriformis or your quadratus lumborum or some other magic muscle? If we take a full body approach, we are going to strengthen all of those muscles anyway. We don't have to do that. And even if we could blame one muscle for your pain, we would still have to take a full body approach because we would want to make sure that that muscle not only functions in isolation exercises, but in compound real life exercises like squatting, hinging, deadlifting, lunging, getting up and down off the floor, going up and down stairs, etc. So we would still have to take a full body approach, right? So it doesn't make sense to there's no reason why we would ever want to take a highly specific approach to rehab. There's no benefit to it. There are only drawbacks. So let's give you a couple of examples. Actually, I already went through the squat example and the golf example. The point I want to make here is that everybody I get questions all the time. Just tell me what exercises to do. Just tell me what exercises. I don't know. What are you capable of? We start everybody in our program, whether you come from a weightlifting background or you're basically bedridden or literally bedridden. And we start everybody. We use a tiered progression system. What we've done in our program is we mapped out literally every exercise that exists for the human body, every joint, every muscle group, every direction of motion, from easiest to hardest, and specifically easiest to hardest for a person with back pain and sciatica, and then organize them into tiers of difficulty. We start every single person from tier 0 because we need to make sure you have the movement prerequisites before we advance you to harder things. For example, in tier 1 of our system, we have a lot of like getting up and there's things on the ground and then there's some things that are standing. So you have to be able to get up and down off of the ground. That's a basic prerequisite to be able to advance. So to graduate from tier 0, you have to be able to get up and down off of the ground. You get what I'm saying? So our tiered progression system takes people from, do you basically have your range of motion and that's it, right? To, okay, let's work on some stability. Okay, cool. Then let's work on some endurance and stamina. Okay, cool. Now let's build real strength and resilience. Great. Now tier 4 is power, speed, agility, quickness, athleticism. Now that's not for everybody, but it's there for the people who need it. That's what works. And we're mapping it out. Yeah, so we've got our difficulties there, but we're also doing it in terms of every single squat progression, lunge, hinge, sagittal core stability, lateral core stability, flexion, extension, rotation, lateral flexion, hip ranges of motion, upper body ranges of motion, literally every single thing that the human body can do and organize from easiest to hardest. That's why we have success. And the cool thing is by doing this and accounting for your entire body, we do not have to worry about all the mobility and corrective stuff like, well, but my glutes are asleep or my psoas is tight. Oh, cool. We are going to strengthen your glutes and we're going to do it better than most glute strengthening programs because we're going to do it in every range of motion in every functional exercise you can think of. Same with your hip flexors. Oh, and your quadratus lumborum, because it's just a part of a full body fitness program that uses graded exposure. You get what I'm saying? So we don't even have to, it's not like we're saying, well, it's either our way or it's the highway, bro. We're saying, yeah, sure, we should strengthen the glutes. Sure. But like, we should also strengthen all the rest of your legs and your core and your upper body too, right? Those are important too for real life. When you pick up a baby off of the floor or out of a crib, what are you doing? Out of a crib would be a good example, actually, because that's a hinge over a like gate, basically. So you're doing a deadlift and probably twisting a little bit at the same time, right? That's real life. That's why we got to take a full body approach. Cool. Whole person approach is the way to go. And then the way that we know how fast to progress through that is our safe pain protocols. You got to know the difference between safe pain and unsafe pain, because if you push through unsafe pain, you're going to flare it up. And if you baby yourself and you don't push through anything because you're too afraid, then you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get stronger. All right. So today you learned that you are not your MRI report. Stop worrying so much about the MRI. As long as your doctor has ruled out red flags, stop thinking about it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but thinking about it does make it worse. You don't need to worry about your asymmetry. Everybody's asymmetrical. Pain is multifactorial. There's no single cause. The cup analogy is the best analogy that I have to simplify all of the multiple factors. But again, it's still multiple factors. All right. You learned that you need to use graded exposure to full body strength, and that you really cannot be forgetting about stress and lifestyle. These things are absolutely critical to a proper recovery, because again, stress and depression are bigger risk factors for chronic pain than disc herniations. I wanted to mention that earlier. So just one last factoid, because this is really important. When we look at research on disc herniations and do they cause pain? First of all, we see that only 1 to 3%, between 1 and 3% of disc herniations can actually be labeled as symptomatic, meaning most people are walking around with disc herniations not causing pain. And beyond that, we need to understand that your discs are, when they compare symptomatic versus asymptomatic populations, people with or without back pain, you would expect that people with back pain would on average have a much higher percentage of disc herniations, meaning that it's much more likely that a person with pain has disc herniation than a person without pain. And it is true that it's a little bit more likely, but we're talking like, let's say that 60% of 50-year-olds, and these are actually pretty close. The numbers that I'm about to quote you are off the top of my head, but they're pretty close. And they're from a 2015 study by Brinjikji and colleagues. And then they did a follow-up study the next year. So 60% of 50-year-olds will have a disc bulge in a pain-free people, of people with zero pain. 60% of 50-year-olds will have disc bulges. If you were to compare the same age range, but people who have pain, and just take MRIs of all of them, then I think it's something like maybe 63% of 50-year-olds, or maybe 65% of 50-year-olds. So the risk increase it only goes up like a few percentage points, right? So yeah, does having the stuff on your MRI matter? A little bit, but not very much. And then if we compare the magnitude of risk when we're looking at anxiety and depression or stress, we see that it's hundreds of percentage points, right? Because a 2.8 or a 2.3 times risk is hundreds of percentage points of increased risk. You get what I'm saying? So it's magnitudes higher risk, right? Anxiety, depression, fear, stress, all those kinds of things. So those things matter much, much, much more than the disc herniations. Cool. So again, you're not your MRI report. Stop worrying about asymmetry. Pain is multifactorial. Use graded exposure to full body strength. Don't forget about stress and lifestyle. And if you want a deep dive training to really understand this stuff, see better examples and how we apply these principles in real life with real case studies. And if you're curious about working with us one-on-one and you just want us to map things out, then watch the free masterclass. We break it all down. And then if you'd like to reach out to us and learn about our programs, you can do that. And even if you don't, you're going to walk away with more value from that training and more practical education on exactly how to fix chronic back pain and sciatica than you have gotten probably from all of your paid treatments in the past. So click the link in the description, watch the masterclass. I'll see you there, and I'll see you in the next episode.